Shadow Hack. Chapter 831, Duoju's Thoughts. The Colosseum looked like a hollow cylinder from outside with 4 entrances from all 4 directions. Half of the lowest layer was the resting and waiting area of the combatants, while the other side was where the beasts were kept. Each cage had a sliding iron door which opened directly into the fighting arena. The first level of the hollow cylinder was the same, but the second and third levels were for the spectators. The common people who wanted to see battles in the arena would enter the second level to find a seat, while the majority of direct disciples of the 4 great clans sat in the third level and had a high raised platform. It provided them with the most clear sight of the fighting arena. Some seats were especially reserved for the young masters and clan patriarchs as well as elders of the 4 great clans. Even if the other direct descendants wanted to sit there, they did not have the guts to do so. At that moment a middle-aged man wearing luxurious clothes was walking up the platform. 2 thick and solid arms sprouted out from his shoulders, and his arms were filled densely packed eyes. He was the manager of the Colosseum, Duoju. The Colosseum was the business that belonged to the 4 great clans, and its manager changed every 5 years. The person for manager position was chosen by the 4 great clans in rotation. Duoju was assigned as a subordinate of Doro clan. After taking the post, he had planned to use the opportunity to serve the 4 young masters and make himself familiar with them, so that he could obtain the chance to achieve meteoric success in the future. But before a long time had passed since he took office, Godfather descended into the mortal world to rest and recuperate and issued his 2 mission. After the 4 young masters obtained them, they gathered subordinates in the city and left toward Lakshmi city. Duoju had been hoping that once the young masters returned, they would visit the Colosseum, so he had been preparing for their visit. Yet once the battle concluded, the 3 young masters who had sat on the high platform were nowhere to be seen. Duoju looked all around but didn't discover any traces of the 3 young masters, so he waved his hand at a maid standing on the high platform and asked, "Where are the young masters?" "The 3 young masters left, Lord Manager," the maid replied honestly. "Already left?" Duoju waved his hand again, indicating for the maid to withdraw. While standing on the high platform, he looked at the excited and lively crowd underneath and mumbled to himself, "Could the 3 young masters have grown tired of watching this program? Or have they left to attend to some matters? I can't understand. It hasn't been long since they came, but they have already left." The 3 young masters had made a trip after a long time, so he wanted to use the great opportunity to get acquainted with them and properly serve upon them so that after his term as the manager of the Colosseum concluded, he could become a subordinate of young Master Domingo. But what a pity! Duoju sighed and looked at the battle underneath with his thoughts wandering all around. Li Yunmu arrived at the lowest level of the Colosseum, which was the rest and recuperation lounge for combatants, with Brunhilde expressionlessly following behind him. The 2 young masters floated after them in mid-air. In the lounge, the combatants were laughing and playing with each other. Only some of the newcomer combatants were sitting in the corner, with nervousness clear on their faces. Those who became combatants in the Colosseum weren't from the 4 great clans, but had all come from the lower city region. In order to survive, they could only mentally ready themselves to lose their lives and become combatants. Some of the powerful victors were also present there. They had come with the extra aim of obtaining the recognition of the direct descendants of the clans, besides just earning money. If the direct descendants looked upon them favorably, they could shed the status of lower city regions poor and would become the servants of the 4 great clans. When Li Yunmu and Brunhilde entered, the entire lounge turned silent. All the combatants began to carefully size up the 2 of them. The powerful combatants sitting in the front row straightened their waists while staring at Li Yunmu. Everyone thought that the 2 of them were direct descendants of the 4 great clans who had come to pick servants. After a moment of silence, a muscular man sitting in the first row stood up and respectfully said to Li Yunmu, "Lord, have you come to choose servants? I have fought in tens of matches and have always won. Perhaps you can." The moment he finished speaking, a lean youth stood up from the first row with countless cracks on his arms which were apparently eyes which did not open. "Old bastard, step down. Regardless of how many you win, everything is because of brute strength. Those beasts are comparable to you in strength, so you naturally won. But in terms of strength, can you compare to the branch family descendants of the 4 great clans? Lord is definitely here to choose someone intelligent." When the muscular man looked at the youth, he grew indignant and loudly said, "My great strength is naturally an ability. Unlike you rat, who doesn't have strength and can only rely on some schemes again and again." The rat laughed but did not retort. He turned to look at Li Yunmu and said to curry favor, "What sort of character is Lord? If he lacks powerful people, he could easily find them. It's easy to find a fighter but hard to find a strategist, do you understand?" Li Yunmu looked at the old bastard and rat throwing barbs at each other with interest. Both of them were soon tired of quarreling, however, and turned toward him, apparently waiting for him to say something. "You both seem to misunderstand. I am not here to select servants, but rather to bring people to participate in the Colosseum competition. You two are quite interesting though. It looks like the bloodline of the 4 great clans in your blood didn't awaken and so you were thrown into the lower city," Li Yunmu said with a smile. Once the old bastard and rat heard those words, their expressions darkened and they nodded indicating agreement. "Since this is the case, then you both want to return to the 4 great clans, right?" Li Yunmu inquired. The 4 great clans were like nobility in Asura city. Every poor person wanted to shed the identity of the resident of lower city and enter the 4 great clans as branch family descendants or perhaps as a servant. The 2 men nodded, revealing a hint of zealotry in their eyes. Why were they staking their lives in the Colosseum? Wasn't it to attract the attention of the descendants of the 4 great clans sitting on the platform? That's good. I have a task for you too. If you complete it successfully, I will recruit you as my subordinates." After saying that, Li Yunmu waved his hand, which slowly pulled Jasmine and Domingle hovering the air in front of everyone. When the people present at the scene saw Jasmine and Domingle's appearances, they were startled, especially the old bastard and rat who had nodded moments earlier. They froze in place. As long as any combatant wanted to become the servant of the 4 great clans, they would definitely remember the appearance of the majority of direct descendants as well as the young masters. And the 2 people floating in front of the crowd were certainly 2 of the young masters. The entire lounge turned silent. None of the combatants sitting in the lounge made any sound, and some of them even lowered their heads, pretending that they saw nothing. Rat's body shuddered and he stammered out, "Lord, the task you said is..." Chapter 832, Malicious Thoughts. Li Yunmu nodded, then when he saw the change in expression of rat and old bastard, he said with a smile, "I won't make things difficult for you. If you can't do it, then my subordinate will complete this task. The choice is yours. If you choose to accept this task, you will offend the 4 great clans. Oh, that's right, there's still young Master Luo Tian. Bring him in." While speaking, Li Yunmu kept looking at old bastard and rat. It was only when he said the last line that he slightly turned around, aiming his words at the maid in the darkness. The moment he spoke them, a group of maids carried the unconscious Luo Tian in front of rat and old bastard. Immediately after placing him down, the maids left. When rat, who had a shrewd face, saw the 3 young masters in front of him, and in such circumstances, he could not control his expression. A hint of astonishment appeared on his face. Old bastard was also unable to control his expression. His eyes went wide when he looked at Li Yunmu, and his tall body began to shudder. Just a moment ago, the 2 of them had enthusiastically agreed to do anything for Li Yunmu. But who could have expected that this youngster wanted to do something related to the 4 young masters? The status of the 4 young masters in the 4 great clans was completely clear to the 2 men. Yet the youngster in front of them, who had been smiling since the start, had surprisingly dared to kidnap them. He should have caught them outside the Colosseum and then brought them to the lounge. Everyone inside it was from the lower city and wanted to fight to leave their poverty behind. Rat's eyes suddenly lit up, he seemed to have guessed something, and his expression, which he was unable to control, crumbled completely. He looked at Li Yunmu with an unsightly expression and said while shivering, "Lord, you aren't thinking of putting these 3 young masters in the fighting arena and making them compete, right? That's precisely what I plan to do. I want to enjoy the show presented by these 3 brats, the 3rd level platform, so I need 2 people to deliver them to the arena. Are you 2 unwilling to do it?" Li Yunmu asked at the end. He and Brunhilde had watched a few battles in the Colosseum and could sense the ready-to-die at any moment attitude of the combatants. Because of that, he had believed that those people from the lower city would definitely agree to his request for a better future, but it seems like he had overthought it. When Old Bastard heard those words, his legs went soft and he almost toppled to the ground. The expression of Rat, who was standing on the side, also froze. He looked at Li Yunmu, then looked at the 2 young masters floating in the air with all sorts of plans forming in his mind. The youngster in front of him had surprisingly called the young master little brats. Without something backing him, he would have to be crazy to speak and act like that. Since there was a higher chance of it being the former, the rat was somewhat nervous while looking at the 3 young masters. After thinking about it carefully, he realized that it might be an opportunity to change his fate. The youngster in front of him definitely was not a young master of the 4 great clans. After all, if he had been a young master, he would not have done such a thing. Moreover, if this youngster was a young master, his strength should have been comparable to that of the other 3 young masters. But he could see that one of the young masters was unconscious and the other 2 had been casually restricted without having any chance of resisting. This sort of strength and confidence could only be possessed by someone above young masters. "Lord, before we agree to accept your respected self's task, can you tell us who exactly are we depending upon? Without any confidence, the 2 of us will probably be unable to complete this task," Rat said respectfully with a hint of hope in his eyes. "I will show you this, for your confidence." After saying that, a divine presence erupted from Li Yunmu's body. When Rat and Old Bastard, who were standing nearest to him, sensed it, their complexion instantly turned plain. Rat promptly made a decision and knelt down, resolutely saying, "Lord, hand over this matter to me. Your distinguished self can remain at ease and wait on the high platform to see a good show." That's right. You 2 divide the work among yourselves. One of you should put these 3 brats into the Colosseum while the other one should run to the cages of the vicious beasts and release all of them." After saying that, Li Yunmu looked at the unsightly complexion of Domingle and Jasmine and casually waved his hand. The black fog, which bound the 2 of them, turned into 3 black dots and entered the space between the eyebrows of the 3 people, forming a clearly visible circular imprint. Without the support of black fog, the 2 young masters collapsed on the ground. A crisp sound came from their bodies. Their cultivation has been sealed. Right now, they are equivalent to ordinary people, if somewhat more sturdy. I will now hand over this matter to you." After saying that, Li Yunmu turned around and walked into the darkness. After a long time, Jasmine and Domingle crawled up from the ground with unsightly expressions. They relaxed their muscles and clearly sensed that the power inside their body has been sealed completely. Upon noting that, they looked at Rat and Old Bastard with ice-cold expressions and said in a chilly tone, "You scoundrels who chose to join him to deal with us, don't you want to live?" Rat did not reply, but watched Jasmine and Domingle for a time. He then turned around and said some words to Old Bastard. After that, the confusion on Old Bastard's face was replaced with determination and ruthlessness. Jasmine looked at the movements of the 2 of them, and fury erupted in her heart. She lost all self-control and shrieked, "You 2 are really determined to rebel. When did poor people have such guts, to dare to do this kind of thing to her? You 2 are simply courting death." Domingle said in a frosty tone and advanced to attack them. Before his punch could reach the 2 people, old bastard attacked. His eyes were full of the determination that spoke of being unafraid of death, and his punch crashed into Domingle's shoulders. His power penetrated Domingle's body, and the young master was sent flying. When he struck the ground, he spat out blood. Jasmine saw that when old bastard attacked, his body shuddered, but with her cultivation sealed, she was only an ordinary person. The pure bloodline that she was so proud of was not the slightest bit useful at that moment, and she finally understood what Chen-Chiu wanted to do by throwing them into the arena with a group of beasts. Once sealed, the three of them were ordinary people, without the slightest margin of resisting. If they encountered a group of beasts, it was highly possible that they would die in battle. But even if they did not die, with the three of them forcefully thrown into Colosseum while holding the status of young masters, how would they have the qualifications to become clan patriarchs in the future? Such a move was extremely malicious, and Jasmine's heart filled with boundless regret. Why did they have to go and find Chen-Chiu with Domingle? You watch over these three and wait for the signal, then throw these young masters into the fighting arena. This matter must be arranged properly, or both of us will die, Rat said in a firm voice to old bastard, then glanced at the three young masters and quickly went into the darkness. None of the other combatants sitting inside the lounge dared to even lift their heads. Everyone was clear in their heart that anyone who looked up would be courting death. Chapter 833, Asura City's Power. Li Yunmu walked out of the lowest level with Brunhilde and a group of expressionless maids following behind, none of whom dared to even breathe loudly. You can go. After hearing the command, the maids quickly ran away. Brunhilde looked at them scurrying away and said with a smile, they were really afraid of you. But what exactly are you thinking? Li Yunmu mysteriously smiled and whispered in Brunhilde's ears, just some mischief to make Asura City even more chaotic. Really? Brunhilde asked in astonishment. She looked at Li Yunmu with an incredulous gaze until he nodded, and only then did she believe him. If Li Yunmu's words were true, Asura City was a nest of talented individuals. The ancient gods of Land of Ice were roughly comparable to those of Lanlu, since both had 7 main ones plus the others. Let's go. We should watch from the platform this play that I so meticulously planned. Li Yunmu embraced Brunhilde and entered the spectator stand of the Colosseum, then walked directly to the platform on the 3rd level. When the direct descendants sitting in the spectator stand saw what he was doing, their expressions filled with astonishment. Moro clan only 2 of them, and they should be branch family descendants. Why did they come to the 3rd level? When did the branch family descendants gain the guts to sit on the platform? This branch family descendant is really arrogant. The woman by his side should also be a branch family descendant? But why does she have 2 arms above her head? A group of direct disciples sitting near the edge discussed what they were seeing. When one of the direct descendants of Moro clan sitting near the end saw Chen-Chiu's face, his complexion instantly turned pale. At the time Patriarch was interrogating Chen-Chiu, he had been standing outside the hall through it all. But the youth did not say anything about Chen-Chiu having soared to heaven in one step and becoming a god as well as Godfather's son. If he spoke up, it was highly possible that he would die. As for the people commenting on the situation near him, he pretended not to hear it. Li Yunmu and Brunhilde stepped on the platform and sat down near Duoju. As the manager, Duoju was thinking about how to curry favor with the 4 young masters, so when he heard the comments, he turned around and saw 2 branch family descendants sitting near him. Fury erupted in his heart and he bellowed. You, a branch family descendant, dares to sit on this platform? Don't you understand the rules? Come people! Before he could finish speaking, a divine presence spread out from Li Yunmu's body and forced Duoju to kneel down. Lord, I was blind and didn't see your distinguished self, Duoju instantly said while trembling. God damn me, God damn me! The group of direct descendants sitting in the spectator stand under the platform had countless suspicions in their hearts. The 2 people who should have been chased out were sitting on the chair while the manager who loves to boss people around was kneeling on the ground. Li Yunmu had only focused his presence on Duoju, so no one else understood what had happened. Once he released Doju, he waved his hand and said, "Find someone to serve me." After hearing his words, Doju hastily stood up. He quickly ran down the high platform and chose a few maids to serve Li Yunmu. After doing that, he followed the maids up the stairs and also stopped beside Li Yunmu while full of excitement. The unknown person was surprisingly a god. If Doju properly waited upon him, he would be greatly rewarded. Moreover, besides just rewards, it was highly possible that he would soar to the sky in one step. Although the god did not belong to his clan, a god was still a god. Even the patriarchs had to hear their words. When Doju thought about that, he quickly bowed himself slightly, placed his hands behind his back, and perked up his ears. As long as the Lord God gave any command, he would immediately carry it out. The numerous maids brought fruits and tea and spread them on the platform. Li Yunmu looked at the competition going underneath with full attention while Brunhilde at his side looked at the changed attitude of Doju and laughed in her heart. If the manager knew that the following competition would be of 3 young masters against a group of beasts, would he still be hell-bent on serving them? The battle in the fighting arena was in full swing, regardless of whether the beast attacked or the combatant, both of them attracted a wave of cheers from the spectators. The atmosphere in the Colosseum was becoming livelier and livelier. But the more excited everyone grew, the more focused the combatant and the beast in the arena became. Both of them gazed straight at each other. In the arena, only one side could live. Whoever did not want to die more had to kill the enemy to survive. The people of Asura city, who were innately fighters, loved to watch bloody battles, unlike the bloodlines of the other ancient gods. Li Yunmu was watching with some interest the sight of how mortals killed vicious beasts and survived. That moment between life and death was rather interesting. At that moment, the system which had stayed hidden in his brain until then woke up and said, "Finally, I almost choked to death, trying to conceal my presence. Aren't you being too brazen appearing over here? If Asura sensed your presence, the next battle between gods might not happen and it would turn into everyone in Lanlu trying to hunt the 2 of us. Were your earlier words really true though? Does this Asura city truly hide so much strength?" While watching the battles, Li Yunmu kept communicating with the system. "Of course it is true. When we were outside Asura city, I sensed that Asura stood at the pinnacle of ancient gods. Or no, it would be better to say that his cultivation is comparable to a quasi-master god. I thought I could conceal your ancient god's strength, but not hide it in front of a quasi-master god like Asura. I hadn't expected that he had been conspiring for so long while hiding his strength. Apart from Asura, the other 4 ancient god presences should belong to the 4 ancestors of 4 great clans. But I am curious about why the city lord, who is a direct descendant of similar status, is only a god," Li Yunmu said with suspicion in his voice. Before coming to Asura city, Li Yunmu knew that although he only had the cultivation of a god, he could erupt with strength that was comparable to that of master gods. But once he entered Asura city, he discovered that not only was Asura already a quasi-master god, his 4 sons were also ancient gods. It could be said that Asura city's concealed strength far surpassed that of the other 6 cities. Yes, how could you push the gods into a battle of gods if, being logical, the other 5 ancient gods should already know that ancient god Lakshmi suffered severe injuries and Asura already possesses the strength of a master god. With that knowledge, they might change sides before the battle and first take out the weakest among them, the system analyze. All I want to do is create some chaos. We should wait until I get close to Asura as his trusted aide and attack him. Naturally, his strength is roughly comparable to that of the other 6 ancient gods joined together. But Asura has always been very confident, so I feel that he has some backup prepared. This sneak attack plan should be discussed properly." The system did not reply and just concealed itself once more. Chapter 834, The Start of a Good Show. Li Yunmu calmly watched the battle underneath the platform, which had already reached the climax. Regardless of whether it was the combatant or beast, both had numerous wounds on their bodies. If any side dared to relax their vigilance, they would meet their death in the arena. Truly ferocious, Li Yunmu mumbled. After talking with Chen Qiu and seeing the battles in the Colosseum, he gained more insight and finally understood why Asura had adopted the branch descendant as his son. According to Li Yunmu's plan, Chen Qiu should have vigorously resisted arrest at the gate and rushed to the city lord's mansion where he would place the responsibility of Ming Xiu's death on a holy daughter and be acknowledged by Asura. But who could have expected that Chen Qiu was a very competent person? For the city lord and 4 great clans, pure bloodline was the most important, but Godfather Asura of the entire Asura race did not care about them that much. What Li Yunmu hadn't expected was that Asura would adopt Chen Qiu as his son. Moreover, he even raised Chen Qiu's cultivation to god level. After it just happened, Li Yunmu couldn't understand what was going on, but now he did. The ancestors of the 4 great clans had become ancient gods, which was clearly hidden from Asura. Because of that, the 4 ancestors hid in the clan residences and did not appear in front of anyone. However, while Asura stayed in the city lord's mansion, the city lord naturally couldn't advance his cultivation and become an ancient god. The 5 sons were able to act like that because of the power of belief. Li Yunmu, who had investigated the power of belief in Chen Qiu's body, understood why the system called power of belief poison. Although it could instantly raise the cultivation of a mortal to that of a god, it wasn't without any residual effects. If someone used the power of belief to increase their cultivation, they could only continue using the power of belief to advance their cultivation. Asura City's territory was divided, and the power of belief was a limited resource. It was produced inside the body of a mortal and then transferred to Godfather, who would divide it among the city lord and the 4 great clans. The amount of power received by everyone was fixed, and was just right to raise their cultivation to late-stage god realm but no further. The 4 ancestors and the city lord were stuck in late-stage god realm. They couldn't advance, so they naturally began to make plans. After all, who didn't want to become even more formidable? The system had sensed the presence of the 4 ancient gods, which made it clear that the 4 great clans were moving their hands and feet or perhaps have stolen it. Regardless of whichever case it was, the 4 great clans and the city lord needed to hide it from Asura. After all, the power of belief was extremely important. It was critical to the 4 ancestors and the city lord to advance their cultivation, but it was also critical to Asura to raise to a master god. If the matter of stealing was discovered, Asura would not show mercy because the others were his sons. Naturally, Asura had sensed that something was wrong, which is why he took action and raised Chen Qiu's strength directly to God realm from initial stage Sage Flux expert, as well as adopted him as his son. By bringing Chen Qiu's status and strength on par with the 5 ancestors, Asura intended to use him as an errand boy to deal with the 5 ancestors. The end result would be a lot like Chen Qiu and the 5 ancestors fighting in the arena while Asura sat on the platform, watching them from above. Such a move was really ferocious. Ha 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 ha, he won, this mortal really won. Fierce, really fierce. Unfortunately, the beast let its guard down at the end, letting this mortal find an opportunity to attack. Li Yunmu focused back on the battle below and saw that it had already finished. The beast was lying on the ground with blood flowing out of its body. Its opponent was brandishing his blade with blood covering his body. Regardless of whether it were the branch family descendants sitting on the 2nd floor or direct descendants sitting on the 3rd floor, all of them were howling, and the atmosphere in the Colosseum was reaching its peak. When Duoju standing by the side saw that, a hint of a self-satisfied smile appeared at the corner of his lips. After accepting the position of manager of the Colosseum, he had changed the rules in regards to the appearance of combatants. First would appear the weaker ones, who would be massacred by beasts. After the beast won a few battles, a somewhat more powerful combatant would appear. In this manner, the excitement of the audience would rise step by step. Anyone who saw the proceedings could not fight back the excitement. Duoju looked at the smile on Li Yunmu's face and felt very happy in his heart. As long as the next few battles could drive up the atmosphere, the Lord God would become even more immersed. When Duoju saw that the arena was being tidied up, he guessed that the next battle should be between Old Bastard and a beast. Old Bastard was one of the main pillars of the Colosseum. By relying on brute force, he had torn the bodies of countless beasts. Every time he appeared, he attracted the attention of guests sitting on the high platform and made the atmosphere reach the peak. After a short while, Duoju returned from his thoughts and noticed that the audience had stopped howling. Everyone seemed to be startled. Discomfort rose within Duoju after noticing that, and he followed everyone's gaze to the people who had appeared in the arena. The moment he recognized them, his mind went numb and his legs went soft. He immediately knelt down on the ground. 333 young masters, how did they appear on the stage? Who the hell dared to do such a thing? Duoju furiously howled while crawling back up from the ground. Still trembling, he prepared to go down the stage to deal with the matter. The three respectable young masters had surprisingly turned into lowly combatants. If this matter was not dealt with properly, his head might not stay in place in the aftermath. Did I let you go? Li Yunmu turned around and looked at Duoju, who was just about to move, and said in a disinterested voice, I did this. I want to see these three brats demonstrate how they flee for life when in desperate straits. If you go down, your head will go flying in the air. After hearing those words, Duoju, who had his back toward Li Yunmu, pinched his face to confirm that he wasn't dreaming. He could not go on stage but could not stay where he was either. He was completely bewildered about what to do in such a situation. Li Yunmu noticed that many other people had stood up in the spectator stands of the Colosseum to jump across the fence and rescue their clan's young masters, so he slowly stood up and released his divine presence. It erupted from within him and spread in all directions, covering the entire Colosseum. Every person in the Colosseum sensed his divine presence and turned to look at Li Yunmu with pale complexions while maintaining their stance without the slightest movement. Whoever goes down will die. This is a good show I prepared for you all, so you have to watch it. No one is allowed to rescue them. Everyone return to your seats. After saying that, Li Yunmu flung his sleeves, and waves of divine power shuttled across the Colosseum, fluttering in front of the descendants who wanted to jump across the fence to rescue their clan masters and forcing them to retreat back to their seats. Everyone in the audience sat down with unsightly complexions, but no one uttered a single word. The originally lively Colosseum turned into a death zone, filled with absolute silence. Duoju remained rooted to his original location. Li Yunmu looked at everyone with a hint of a smile on his face while standing on the high platform. After a moment, he clapped and said, "All right, now the performance begins. Release the beasts." Chapter 835, Everyone's Thoughts. He really dared to release the beasts. What will my clan's young master do? He has lost all face now. Usually he treats the clan's honor as his first priority, so who knows what kind of shadow this event will leave in his heart. A plump male with two thick and solid arms looked at Luo Tian lying on the stage underneath. He frowned while thinking about it, but didn't say anything. That Rahu clansman was not worried about the beasts. Although his young master was only a great flux expert on the 9th level, his strength was enough to fight against an initial stage sage flux expert. And among the vicious beasts, the strength of the strongest one was only comparable to that of a 9th level great flux expert. The young master could slap it to death. But the crucial point was the problem of face. What sort of place was the Colosseum? It was the entertainment area for the descendants of the four great clans. Every battle was a death match between the residents of Lower City and the imprisoned vicious beasts. None of the clansmen of the four great clans would enter the Colosseum as a combatant to let the audience watch. The profession of a combatant was for the lower class people. Yet the young masters who were supposed to be the most respectable among the younger generation of the four clans were now the combatants. This was undoubtedly the most humiliating thing for them. After the event, not only would they receive a mental setback, but even the position of clan patriarch, which was originally supposed to pass on to them without any troubles, would become out of their reach. Even if the three young masters were the children of their clan patriarchs, after such a disgraceful matter happened in front of everyone, all their prestige would be destroyed. They would lose the qualifications to fight for the position of clan patriarch and would withdraw to become direct descendants of the clan. The branch family descendants of the four clans took a deep breath and raised their heads to look at Chen Qiu sitting on the platform with a hint of fear in their hearts. The branch family descendant god sitting on the high platform was really daring. The direct descendants sitting on the third level grew excited. After the three young masters retreated, one of them would be chosen to become the leader of the younger generation in their clan. It was an opportunity in which the position of clan patriarch might come within their reach. Among the direct descendants, the majority of them were excited. Only the direct descendants of the Moro clan were having complex feelings when looking at the young masters flying into rage out of humiliation on the stage. Ever since the interrogation in the palace hall, Chen Qiu had become brazen and his actions unbridled. When the direct family descendants recalled the reward bestowed upon him, they were envious in their heart, but they did not dare to say anything. On the fighting stage, Jasmine and Domingo, whose faces were as pale as those of a ghost, were holding weapons in their hands before the densely packed spectator stand. Fury burned in their hearts, but they didn't say anything. "What should we do now?" Jasmine narrowed her eyes while speaking in an ice-cold voice to Domingo. She had never thought that such a day would come. They were young masters who should be sitting on the platform and looking down on the arena, but Chen Qiu had forced them to become combatants watched by the descendants of the four great clans. What else? Naturally adapt to the situation. Domingo lightly coughed, and his complexion became even paler. Chen Qiu, who sat on the high platform, had sealed their cultivation, so how could they escape? Since that was the case, they could only fight until the elders of the clan received word of what was going on and hurried over. Domingo looked at the doors at the edge of the stage and continued maintaining his vigilance while holding a weapon in his hand. Luo Tian, who had lain on the ground till then, woke up groggily. He got up from the ground and looked at Jasmine and Domingo. "You two, what the hell are you two doing?" After saying that, Luo Tian looked all around, and his brain instantly sobered up. His eyes went wide and he said in astonishment, "Why are we in the Colosseum? Just now, weren't we in the four-story?" When he thought back, the final scene in his mind was that of the room in the four-story building and him launching an attack at Chen Qiu. It had resulted in a formidable rebound, which had sent him unconscious. Luo Tian narrowed his eyes and howled, "Chen Qiu!" Once that was out of his system, he looked at the weapon in his hand and at Jasmine and Domingo before saying, "What the hell is going on here? You still can't see it? Chen Qiu has become a god and captured us to throw us into the Colosseum to fight with the beasts. You want to ask what he is thinking? Nothing except making us lose the position of young masters. Once I become a god, I will definitely kill him," Jasmine ruthlessly said with boundless fury in her heart. "Preserve your physical strength. Our cultivations are sealed, so we are at most somewhat more formidable than ordinary people. 3 beasts will attack us, which means each one of us has to handle one. There will be no time to care about others." Just as Domingo said that, the countless gates at the edge of the arena opened up, and beasts filled with ferocity slowly walked out. "Damn it, this Chen Qiu really wants us to die." The 3 young masters looked at the beasts slowly walking out and swallowed their saliva as their eyes went wide. If their cultivation wasn't sealed, the 3 of them would not be afraid of some 20 beasts. They could deal with much more than that at the same time without any problems. But with their cultivation sealed, they were only 3 ordinary people. One of them could barely deal with 1 beast. If tens of beasts attacked together, then the 3 of them would have no chance. The only ones who possessed some strength after their cultivation was sealed were Luo Tian and Domingo. As for Jasmine, she walked the path of charming technique and could not fight. "Luo Tian, you and I will stand on each side of Jasmine. Whichever beasts attack, we will kill it. Jasmine, you use your Tenjin dance to charm these beasts," Domingo hastily said while looking at the beasts closing upon them and thinking of any better strategy to deal with them. Luo Tian nodded, but Jasmine next to him was stupefied. You want me to perform Tenjin dance in front of everyone? How much do you want to embarrass me? She asked incredulously. Every clansman of Deva clan had to learn Tenjin dance as they mainly relied on the charming techniques. Even without cultivation, they could use the Tenjin dance to charm all living beings. The only downside of it was that its effects were somewhat weaker. But they weren't only in a life and death situation, but also in the arena of the Colosseum, watched by a large crowd. Doing a Tenjin dance there was equivalent to being a dancer performing for the descendants of the four clans. This sort of humiliation was much worse than death. Don't even think about it. I won't perform Tenjin dance in front of everyone, Jasmine firmly said while tightly holding an iron rod in her hand with narrowed eyes. Whatever, then we will see whether you can persevere by yourself until the clan elders arrive. If we make it out alive, I will definitely ask Godfather to arrest Chen Qiu and torment him until he dies, Domingle said while gnashing his teeth. The 20 or so beasts formed a circle around them and slowly closed in on the three young masters. A pungent smell entered their noses, causing their complexion to turn ashen and their expressions grow dark. What smell is this? Why is it so unpleasant? I cannot bear it. Chapter 836, Four Elders. Jasmine covered her nose while revealing an uncomfortable expression on her beautiful face below the veil of muslin. As the young mistress of Deva clan, it was the first time such a bloody smell had assailed her nose. After one whiff of it, she felt like she was going to faint. It was also the first time she had been reduced to the level of ordinary people. Without cultivation, she couldn't even use the charming techniques of Deva clan. Damn it! She raised her head and looked at the man sitting on the high platform on the third level, and a wave of rage rose in her heart. While she was being absent-minded, a strong, stinky gust blew at her. When Jasmine sniffed it, her mind went blank. A shadow appeared in front of her at that moment and extended its glowing sharp talons toward her. When they were about to strike her, a flash of a blade appeared from the left side and forced the black shadow back. Eh? What exactly are you doing? If you continue acting like this, all of us will die in this Colosseum, Domingle said with an ashen complexion and not the slightest consideration for the fact that Jasmine was someone he liked. This stinky air, it's truly repulsive. I cannot stand it. Jasmine felt somewhat wronged for being scolded, and her beautiful eyes turned slightly red. But she knew that she was in the wrong, so she only mumbled her complaint in a soft voice. Domingle did not reply but kept fighting against the beasts pouncing on them with weapons in all six arms. The rank air was extremely unpleasant, and any ordinary smell paled in comparison to it. None of the three of them knew that the beasts in the arena had such a pungent smell since all of them were always sitting on the high platform. At that moment, however, even if the beasts stank, they had to endure and continue fighting. Otherwise, they would be torn to shreds before the clan elders came, and there was nothing more precious than their life. The 20 or so beasts looked at the three people in the middle. Then, their tensed bodies relaxed all of a sudden and they pounced on the humans. The three people could only brandish the weapons in their hands to endure the attacks of the beasts. The descendants sitting in the spectator stand and watching the situation in the arena were slightly startled. The three young masters stood at the peak of their generation, so according to reason, they would not need to be so vigilant when dealing with such a small number of beasts. Those in the audience then took a more careful look and noticed a circular imprint between the eyes of the three young masters. When they associated it with the scene of the beasts surrounding the three young masters, the descendants immediately realized that the god sitting on the high platform had sealed the cultivation of the three young masters. Only those with an extremely ruthless heart would do something like that. The branch disciples began to carefully whisper with each other, inquiring with the person sitting next to them about whether they knew the god sitting on the high platform. Chen Qiu was originally a branch family descendant, so he wasn't known by anyone. All the descendants up and down the rows shook their heads. Only a branch family descendant of Moro clan nodded after some time, indicating that he knew him. Chen Qiu was a disciple of Moro clan. Previously, he was extremely reclusive and his strength was among upper middle tier among the branch family descendants. At that time, my clan's young master sent people 3 times to recruit him but was refused. Afterwards, Chen Qiu spent a lot of money to hire 9 subordinates through the guild and went to Lakshmi city to search for the part of ancient god Lakshmi's soul. When he returned, our young master was dead. But Chen Qiu managed to return alive. Clan Patriarch dispatched half-god Ming Wang to arrest him and bring him back, but this Chen Qiu used Asura eyes to increase his cultivation and rushed to the city lord's mansion. Afterwards, when he returned with Ming Wang, he had already become a half-god. Even more important is that he was adopted by Godfather as a son, becoming an ancestor. After hearing that, the branch descendant of the Deva clan who had inquired went into a daze. He looked at the Moro clansman without any idea of how he should reply. After a long time, a chill ran down his spine, and terror filled his heart. This Lord God is surprisingly so terrifying. But since he has already become a god, why does he want to deal with the 3 young masters? You can see that the cultivation base of the 3 young masters has been sealed before they were sent before the beasts. This simply looks like sending them to their death, the Deva clan's descendants said. You just don't understand. When my clan's young master died, Chen Qiu said that he had been killed by the holy daughter of Lakshmi city. But the clan's treasure Asura eyes, which young master had brought with him, were in Chen Qiu's hand when he returned, so what do you think really happened? Moro clan's descendant said, pretending to know everything. Deva clan's descendant did not reply, but looked up at the high platform with 1/10 envy and 9/10 dread. A true devil. On the 3rd level of the spectator stand, all the direct descendants were watching the situation in the arena. They paid attention to how the 3 young masters fought with the dozens of beasts despite obviously not having enough strength. In less than a few minutes, they were already covered in wounds. Upon seeing their blood, each and every one of the direct disciples tightened their hands underneath the table with their hearts filled with hope that the 3 young masters would be torn into pieces before the clan elders arrived. On regular days, the direct descendants had to be extremely respectful to the young masters, but there was not one of them who did not hope that the young masters would meet with an accident. Frankly speaking, all of them were direct descendants, but the position of clan patriarch, which was supposed to be obtained after great struggle, was turned into a hereditary position. The biological children of the clan patriarch became the young masters, and as soon as they reached the cultivation of great circle sage flux expert, the clan would use the power of belief to help them become a god. If nothing unexpected happened, the other direct descendants would not dare to have any thoughts about the position of young master or clan patriarch. But right then, such a good opportunity presented itself in front of them. As long as the elders of the clan were a bit slow, the 3 young masters would die without a doubt. Once the young masters died, the direct descendants could honorably struggle for the position of young master. On top of that, they would not need to share any blame as all responsibility would be shouldered by that god Chen Qiu. It was an extremely beneficial matter for them. Brunhilde stood up from her seat and looked at Duoju who was still standing with 1 foot in the air and smiled. She walked to Li Yunmu's side and inquired while looking at the 3 young masters in the arena, "Do you really intend to kill the 3 young masters? Wouldn't it turn the 4 great clans against you? Even if I didn't bring this calamity on the 3 younger masters, the 4 great clans are like locusts bound by the same rope. They naturally have to stand on the same side for benefits. But I don't really want to kill these 3 young masters. My main goal is to see whether this quasi-master god Asura will push Chen Qiu in front of the 4 great clans or will continue protecting him despite his unbridledness." While holding Brunhilde, Li Yunmu released his divine presence and sensed the appearance of 4 gods. They finally came. Brunhilde raised her head and looked at the 4 dots in the sky, which were gradually becoming larger. The next instant, the elders of the 4 clans wearing black gowns appeared in the sky and looked at the 3 young masters fighting in the arena. They immediately turned around and looked at Li Yunmu with ice-cold expressions. "You traitor, you should die." After saying that, the three elders erupted with divine presence which was equally matched with his. All of them were initial stage gods. The very first to fly toward Li Yunmu was a muscular man holding an iron hammer. His figure flashed, and he arrived near Li Yunmu while howling loudly. Chapter 837, Extremely Terrifying. The direct descendants on the third level looked at the four elders in the sky with expressionless faces, but a huge storm was raging in their heart. The elders had arrived neither early nor late, they had arrived at precisely the right moment. Everyone's gaze turned to the arena and the three young masters who had been injured after a bitter struggle. 3 of Domingle's 6 arms had been broken, while the others were filled with injuries. Large wounds had appeared on Luo Tian's hands where a spider beast's poison had hit him. As for Jasmine, who possessed the weakest strength in close quarters fighting and who was being protected by the other 2, she only had a few holes in her dress and no injuries. The majority of the beasts had been slightly injured, but only 2 of them had been killed. If the 4 elders had not appeared, the 3 young masters would have died in less than a few minutes. What a pity! Everyone looked at Rahu clan's elder flying toward Li Yunmu on the high platform and sighed inwardly, thinking that it was completely useless to hope for the 3 young masters to die in the Colosseum. Since the 4 elders had appeared, the god on the high platform would not be able to continue the farce. The person flying toward Li Yunmu was the elder of Rahu clan. He held a human-sized black gold hammer in his hands and struck with it in Li Yunmu's direction. Before the hammer even reached him, a violent wind hit Li Yunmu's face. A strong gale filled the Colosseum, and the descendants sitting closest to the high platform covered their faces with their hands and closed their eyes. The enormous hammer was like a large hill coming at the high platform and covered the entire platform in its shadow. Clang! The enormous hammer pulverized the majority of the high platform, and Duoju, who had been standing on the stairs, fell into the spectator stand together with the disciples. Li Yunmu and Brunhilde, however, had completely disappeared. The Rahu clan's elder looked at the pulverized high platform and mumbled while frowning, "Where did he go?" "Here." As soon as he heard that Rahu clan's elder's eyes went wide, and he turned to see Li Yunmu standing just behind him. In a moment of desperation, he extended his hand to attack Li Yunmu. His hand was enlarging at a speed visible to a naked eye until it became large enough to cover the sun and moon. He swatted down with his palm, but suddenly the elder sensed an unbearable pain in the hollow of the palm. When a smack echoed in the area, a bloody hole appeared at the back of his hand. Li Yunmu transformed into a blur, and a large amount of divine power covered his hand. He used it like a blade and stabbed the Rahu clan's elder. After the flash of the blade, the Rahu clan's elder collapsed on the ground with a bang. With only this much strength, is he trying to court death? Li Yunmu turned around and looked at the 3 elders flying through the air toward the arena to settle the crisis of the 3 young masters. Li Yunmu's figure instantly disappeared. Each and every one of the direct descendants took a deep breath when they saw the fallen hammer and the unconscious elder of Rahu clan. The strength of the branch descendant who had become a god recently was extremely terrifying. Just one move had sent a god-level elder of Rahu clan unconscious. In Asura city, Rahu clan was ranked as the first among all clans in terms of strength and divine power. Their hands were also large enough to cover the moon and sun. But just then, the elder of Rahu clan who was also a god was beaten unconscious with a single flash of a blade. This level of strength was simply frightening. Everyone who knew how Chenqiu became a god only had one thought in their mind: he had been imparted a peak-level cultivation method by Godfather. The 3 elders stopped in the air with suspicions in their heart after not hearing any sounds from the high platform. They turned around and saw that the elder of Rahu clan had fallen on his hammer and was not moving. One of the 3 elders belonged to the Deva clan. She was around 20 years of age and had an impressive figure, which she showed off with revealing clothes. "Be cautious, this youngster is extraordinary," she said. The 3 elders increased their vigilance, afraid that suddenly Li Yunmu's figure would appear in the surroundings. The sound of an explosion echoed in the sky, and the three extremely vigilant elders fell toward the arena like kites whose thread had snapped. The three young masters, who had been fighting the beasts in the arena with great difficulty, took note of the god-level elders having fainted because of a sneak attack without being able to resist it in the slightest, and the excitement in their eyes instantly disappeared. They looked at the three unconscious elders while wondering about what was going on. How did this happen? What the hell is this Chen Qiu thinking? Domingle frowned while pondering over the question. If the hatred between them was deep, it could be understood that he would throw them in front of the beasts to be killed. But the crucial thing was that apart from meeting at the Pipa clan, they had only met at the city lord's mansion and in the room of the four-story building. At most, they had taunted him, so he should not go as far as killing them. Not to mention that he had sealed their cultivation base and left them to be killed by some 20 beasts. The three elders fell on the ground, and the sound attracted the attention of the beasts surrounding the three young masters. Straight away, all the beasts rushed to surround the three elders and extended their fangs to bite them. Instantly, however, a divine presence erupted from the three people, and the beasts knelt down on the ground in fear. The cultivation of the three elders hasn't been sealed, we still have a chance, ha ha ha. After seeing what happened, Luo Tian excitedly raised his meteor hammer in the air and began swaying it to create winds. When Jasmine and Domingle heard his excited words, their faces went pale, and they wanted to bash his mouth closed. At that moment, Li Yunmu appeared in the air while holding the elder of Rahu clan in his hand. He threw him on the ground, then waved his hand and 4 black rays shot toward the 4 elders. The black rays entered their bodies and formed a circular imprint on their foreheads. When Jasmine and Domingle saw it, all the resistance disappeared from their hearts, and they returned to looking at Luo Tian as if he was an idiot. Both of them knew that he had a one-track mind, but they hadn't thought that he was an idiot to such an extent. The 4 elders were the last hope for the 3 young masters, but because of his shout, the 4 elders were also turned into ordinary people, which destroyed any chance of them escaping. After the divine presence disappeared, the beasts kneeling on the ground slowly stood up and focused their gazes on the 3 elders with a hint of madness in their eyes. They bit them, but it was like biting gold, and their sharp fangs ruptured. Miserable shrieks echoed, and the horde of beasts returned their attention to the 3 young masters. Only the spider beast remained by the side of the 3 elders and quickly formed a cocoon around them with its silk. It arranged them in a row, then rushed to the side of Rahu clan's elder, who was not too far away, and covered him in a cocoon as well. The horde of beasts returned to the 3 young masters with a hint of viciousness in their eyes. Upon seeing that, the faces of the 3 young masters filled with apathy. Even the clan elders suffered a vicious blow and were turned into ants with their cultivations sealed. Why was Chen Qiu being so excessive? The 3 young masters looked at the beasts while holding their weapons and hoped against hope that their fathers would come. If 3 patriarchs who were late-stage gods came, only then could they be confident that the madman Chen Qiu could be apprehended. Chapter 838, More News. Duoju slowly stood up on the spectator stand and looked at the dull expressions on everyone's faces. It made him feel that something was fishy. Shouldn't they be loudly shouting in excitement? Even if they were not in the mood and wanted their young masters to remain trapped, 4 god-level elders had come from the 4 great clans, so how could that young god win against them? Why wasn't anyone saying anything? Duoju suddenly noticed the enormous hammer stuck on the high platform with 2 familiar silhouettes sitting on it, and his face immediately paled. Unable to believe his eyes, he rushed to the railing of the spectator stage and looked at the arena. The 3 young masters and a group of beasts were battling while on the other side 4 human-sized white cocoons were arranged neatly. When Duoju saw all that, his joy dimmed and he felt his head spinning. Why was this younger god so formidable that even the elders from the 4 great clans weren't his opponents? There was even an elder of Moro clan among the 4 elders. The unfamiliar young god had beaten someone from his own clan unconscious, sealed his cultivation, and thrown him into the arena. He was simply a lunatic. Duoju did not dare to take many glances below. After all, the ones battling were the young masters and elders of the four great clans. In case they struggled free of their restrictions, their fury would soar to the heavens. The young god was so terrifying that it did not matter to him. But Duoju was the manager of the Colosseum without any background or strength. He was only a branch disciple, so when the time came, all the fury would be released on him. His life would be destroyed. Duoju toppled on the ground with a lost look in his eyes. The descendants on the spectator stand did not dare to even make a sound. Their gazes were fixed on the three young masters risking their life to fight off the attacks of the beasts and somehow help the elders who had been turned into cocoons. Their hearts were full of fear toward the branch family descendant Chenqiu. It was especially true in the case of descendants of Deva clan who used charming techniques and viewed all men as ants. Their clan's young master, what a cute and wonderful beauty she was, but she had still been thrown into the arena without any hesitation. In the hearts of the women of Deva clan, Li Yunmia was categorized as the most dangerous individual. The people of the other clans were busy looking at the elders of the four clans and rejoicing in their hearts that they did not rush forth to save their clan's young masters a moment ago. A juvenile youth guard walked up the flight of stairs and looked at the quiet spectator stand. Out of the corner of his eyes, he looked at three young masters staking their lives as well as the four cocoons, and his face immediately turned pale. He turned around and quickly rushed down the stairs. Brunhilde, who was sitting by Li Yunmia's side, turned around and looked at the guard's departing figure. The corners of her mouth curled upwards, revealing a smile. Last time, when someone sneaked off to share what was going on inside, gods of the four clans came. This time, the ones to come should be the patriarchs of the four clans. They possessed the strength of late-stage gods, so based on Chenqiu's strength, he could not be their enemy. So when the patriarchs arrive, Li Yunmia could only suppress his cultivation to initial stage god realm when fighting against them. Their real goal, after all, was to see whether Asura was thinking the same as them and would take action to rescue Chenqiu. While looking at the three young masters in dire straits, the smile on Li Yunmia's face became even wider. Outside the Colosseum, that juvenile soldier ran down the stairs and quickly rushed toward the exit. When other guards saw him flit past them, a bewildered expression appeared on their faces. Hey, where are you running off to? Haven't you already notified the people of the four great clans? The four elders who came have already been apprehended. I am going to make another trip to the four clans and notify their patriarchs. If I am slow, the three young masters will definitely die. After hearing his words, the soldiers at the entrance shivered. Who could have expected that the four god elders from the four great clans would come and end up not being an opponent for the young god? He was extremely frightening. The young soldier ran away so quickly that his legs turned into a blur. In a few minutes, he rushed to the gate at the border of the Colosseum. After passing through there, he rushed to the nearest mansion, which belonged to Moro clan. When he arrived in front of the gigantic gate of the clan residence, he stopped and anxiously gasped for breath while beating at the door. Someone come, anyone. Something big has happened, quickly call your superiors. What happened, what's the matter? The door opened, and a small fat servant rushed out. When he saw the soldier, his expression turned gloomy all of a sudden and he said with distaste, "It's you. Didn't you come here just a moment ago? Now you come again. Are you intentionally trying to create trouble?" After saying that, the fat midget moved to close the door. The soldier saw it and quickly stopped him. He then anxiously said, "Just a moment ago, an elder from your family was beaten unconscious. At the moment, the three young masters are trapped inside the battle arena. You need to inform your clan patriarch quickly. If you delay even a little bit, something bad might happen." The fat midget looked at the earnest appearance of the young soldier and creased his brows, pondering over his words. Finally, he opened the gate to let the young soldier inside, and the two of them quickly rushed to the main hall. After passing through long corridors, they arrived in front of the main hall. There were 5 people guarding the door, with the half-god Ming Wang overseeing them. Once Mingwang saw the fat midget and the young soldier, he closed in on them and asked, "What happened? Why did you come again? Hasn't the clan already dispatched an elder toward the Colosseum?" "The dispatched elder has already been restrained and thrown into the arena." Mingwang was flabbergasted. Even 4 god elders weren't an opponent for Chen Qiu. Was it possible that Godfather had not only bestowed him with god-level cultivation, but also imparted a cultivation method to him? Mingwang turned around and opened the door, entering the main hall. Within it, Xiaoxiu was sitting on the main seat with 3 clan elders underneath him. The 4 of them had been discussing an important matter, but once Mingwang entered, everyone stopped and looked at him. 4 clan elders, the small soldier from the Colosseum has returned to us with more information. He said that the elders of the 4 great elders were beaten by Chen Qiu and he sealed their cultivation and threw them into the arena, Mingwang anxiously said. What exactly does that trash want to do? Does he really think that since Godfather has taken a fancy to him and adopted him as a son, he can run amok in Asura city? Damn it! Let's go, we 4 will go and take a look at what exactly is this trash thinking. The 3 clan elders discussed the matter and looked at Xiaoxiu sitting on the main seat. Although the 4 young masters had become 3 young masters, when all was said and done, the 4 clans were allies, and the troublemaker Chen Qiu was originally from the Moro clan. Xiaoxiu, who was sitting on the main seat, sighed and said while standing up, "Our Moro clan will be blamed for producing a traitor. I will follow you and take a look. If that trash is really disregarding all laws and morality, we must use our full strength to suppress him. As long as he remains alive, I want to see whether Godfather will use this as a pretext to find fault with me." Chapter 839, Torture Fest. Take a look, after the great elders of the 4 clans awakened, they are stamping with fury like a group of clowns. These gods are the direct descendants of the clans and have precious status, even in these dire straits. If it was you, would you seal their cultivation and throw them in the Colosseum among a group of beasts? I wouldn't dare. Why would I want to attract their hatred? Li Yunmu demonically smiled and hugged Brunhilde even tighter. When seen from the back, the 2 of them sitting on the hammer looked like they had been glued together. Everyone in the spectator stand saw that the situation of the 3 young masters and 4 great elders was becoming increasingly more desperate as the battle continued and began to panic in their heart, but no one dared to utter any sound. In the arena, the 4 great elders were protecting the 3 young masters while looking at the beasts surrounding them with weapons in their hands. After a careful count, the number of beasts seemed to surpass 30, which was far more than a dozen beasts from a moment ago. When the smell of blood reeking from the bodies of such a large number of beasts concentrated together, it became extremely terrifying. Even the 4 great elders felt dizzy once it entered their noses. They tightly shut their mouths and began slashing at the beasts charging toward them. Since they were gods, the hardness of their fleshly bodies had reached the level of metal long ago. No beast was able to cause injury to them. But the 3 young masters were quite a burden, so the 4 great elders did not dare to charge forward and go on a killing spree against the beasts. Even if they could settle the 30 beasts in a short time, during that time, the 3 young masters with soft skin would be bitten and turned into mincemeat. Without any choice, the 4 great elders remained by the side of the 3 young masters while brandishing their weapons, on alert against the attacking beasts. When had they ever been reduced to such a state? Each and every one of them hated Chen Qiu, who sat on the iron hammer, to the bone and killed him countless times in their hearts. The 3 young masters were standing behind the 4 great elders with wooden expressions, feeling completely numb. The 4 great elders had also been captured and thrown in, which left the 3 of them frightened of Chen Qiu. In their heart, they felt that even if the patriarchs came, they still wouldn't be able to save them. This thought became more deep-rooted with the passing of time, and their conviction that they were born to stand above others was gradually smashed into pieces. As time went by, the 3 became completely apathetic and resigned themselves to their fate. Several beasts were walking back and forth in front of the 4 great elders while gazing at them with red eyes. Other beasts also formed a circle around them. After they squeezed together, their joint step caused the stage to shake. It was a rule in the Colosseum to keep the beasts unfed so as to preserve them in the state of extreme starvation in order to bring out their vicious nature. Guided by hunger, the vicious beasts would do everything in their power to kill the fighters and eat them. All 30 of the vicious beasts were like that. With their stomachs rumbling in hunger, they locked onto the 3 young masters with weak fleshly bodies. But the 4 people standing in front of them were emitting dangerous vibes, so the beasts could only continue waiting. One of them, however, could not endure it and charged toward the 4 great elders alone. It was instantly killed. After seeing their fellow comrade die, none of the other beasts dared to go forward and continued surrounding the 3 young masters and the 4 great elders. The 2 sides were in deadlock while waiting for an opportunity. Li Yunmu looked at the deadlock underneath with a faint smile and mumbled to himself, "This battle is really dull. It has unexpectedly reached a deadlock. This won't do, it isn't in accordance with the atmosphere of the Colosseum. The battles should be more exciting." He waved one hand and conjured a black mist in the air which looked like a cloud and emitted a terrifying presence. It floated down to the arena underneath where it turned into threads and entered the bodies of the beasts. The 4 elders looked at the threads of black fog and sensed a terrifying presence from them. When the threads entered the bodies of the beasts, the 4 of them were shocked and loudly shouted, "Not good." As they said those words, the vicious beasts began to undergo a transformation spurred on by the black threads, and the presence coming from their bodies became much stronger. A hint of intelligence appeared in their eyes. The 30 beasts looked at the sky and began to howl, and within a moment, the entire Colosseum was filled with a deafening noise. "Damn it, this Chen Qiu is mentally twisted. How could he torture us to this extent? He was born a branch family descendant and supposed to be a servant. But now, in a short time, he has become a god, so naturally his thoughts have become extremely distorted because of his hate toward the direct descendants. Everyone say a few words to him and don't look at the arena." The elder of Rahu clan voice was filled with hate. Their situation did not look good. Previously, even if they were against 30 beasts, the strength of any individual beast did not surpass Great Flux expert stage. Even if the cultivation of the gods was sealed, their fleshly bodies were still extremely hard, which had brought the battle to a deadlock. When the black mist entered the bodies of the vicious beasts, they were raised to the level of devil beasts, and their strength entered initial stage Sage Flux realm. With more than 30 initial stage Sage Flux stage devil beasts advancing towards them, the 4 elders with strong bodies began to panic. If the 30 beasts really attacked them, the 3 young masters would definitely die. After experiencing such an event, the 3 of them would not be able to maintain their positions, but the 3 of them were still the biological heirs of the clan patriarchs, so they had to survive. The 4 great elders tightened the circle around the 3 young masters and looked at the intelligent devil beasts surrounding them. Several devil beasts were pacing in front of them while looking at them with red eyes. With more howling, the 30 devil beasts seemed to have reached some sort of understanding and charged toward the 4 great elders in unison while releasing their presence. The Colosseum was suddenly drowned in a large amount of paint that had all sorts of colors. The 3 young masters and the 4 great elders were submerged in them and completely disappeared. "This is a good show. Those 4 old bastards have managed to come on time," Li Yunmu mumbled and looked at the distorted sky above the Colosseum. At that moment, 4 silhouettes appeared in the sky, and divine presence filled the Colosseum. One of the figures stretched its hand, and it extended endlessly while the palm continued to enlarge. The enormous palm grabbed some of the devil beasts and crushed them. When the other devil beasts saw that, they instantly stopped in their tracks and began to observe the situation. In the center of the devil beasts, the 4 great elders with tattered clothes looked at the 4 silhouettes, and their taut expressions loosened. When the 3 young masters surrounded by them noticed the 4 figures, their originally numb expressions crumbled and they knelt on the ground where they began to wail loudly. Xiao Xiu looked at Chen Qiu sitting on the iron hammer, and a smile appeared on his expressionless face. "Lord Ancestor, why are you bullying the younger generation of the clan? Have they made some mistakes?" he asked respectfully. When faced with Jiao Xiu's respectful attitude, Li Yunmu was slightly startled. He hadn't expected that the patriarch of the Moro clan would surprisingly be so respectful. Regardless of whether he was sincere or feigning it, someone with a high status acting like that in front of others had to be the shrewdest type of person. Chapter 840, All you want to speak about is rules. The easiest people to deal with were brutish ones because they brought the minimum amount of surprises to the table. While the hardest ones were those who could bow and submit as well as stand tall. Once a brute stood in front of the enemy, they would maintain their stance of seeing the other party as an enemy from beginning to end. But the shrewd people would display goodwill along the way and no one would know whether it is real or fake. They were disrespectful toward me, so I sealed the cultivation of these 3 youngsters to let them learn in the Colosseum. Jiao Xiu, why have you and the other 3 patriarchs come here? Li Yunmu looked at the smiling Jiao Xiu with a cold expression, feeling as if his attack had landed on cotton. His original plan was to let the 3 youngsters suffer humiliation in the Colosseum, and even experience the crisis of life and death. Afterwards, the patriarchs of the 4 great clans would rush over and immediately attack him. The final conclusion would then depend on whether Asura sitting in the city lord's mansion far away would make his move or not. But after coming, the elders of the 4 clans did not charge toward him, so he could not find any faults with them and attack himself. When Jiao Xiu heard his words, he apologetically bent toward him and said with a smile, "The younger generation has broken the rules, so they should be punished. But Lord Ancestor, punishment also must be according to the rules. These youngsters already know their mistakes. Lord, your distinguished self is magnanimous, so you should release them now. After all, even if they are the rudest people, they are still nothing more than a few youngsters." On the spectator stand, all the descendants looked at clan patriarch Jiao Xiu bowing and talking to the former branch family descendant of his clan in a polite tone with astonishment. Moreover, his words clearly displayed his intent to sue for peace. "Jiao Xiu, you are a patriarch of one of the 4 great clans, so you should know that the hierarchy is very strict in Asura city, and it is supplemented by various rules. I will ask you then, what's the punishment for someone who disrespects an ancestor?" Li Yunmu did not pay any attention to the other party's words and instead smiled at Jiao Xiu while speaking slowly. After hearing those words, Jiao Xiu's expression slightly tightened, and it took him a moment to open his mouth again to speak. "If the people of Lower City offend the ancestor, they should be executed, and after death, their soul should be placed in spirit fire for 10,000 years. If branch family descendants of the Middle City do it, the same punishment applies. If direct descendants, clan elders, or patriarchs do it, they should be given 100 lashes from the spirit whip. This has always been the rule and there have been no exceptions. 100 lashes, however, would only injure the flesh of the young masters and elders. Yet Lord Ancestor has punished them by making them fight in the Colosseum. Not only are they injured, but they can no longer even retain their positions of young masters anymore. I think this punishment is sufficient for them. Lord Ancestor, what does your distinguished self says about this?" After saying that, Jiao Xiu looked at Li Yunmu sitting on the iron hammer with a faint smile at the corner of his lips. Even if Chen Qiu, this branch descendant, had already become an ancestor, he was still beneath him. The feeling of down upon him was truly refreshing. "According to what you said, they naturally have received their punishment." Li Yunmu nodded and immediately changed the topic of discussion. "But what if someone in Asura city attacks the ancestor?" The moment he said that, Jiao Xiu froze, but continued to maintain his slight smile. He did not have the slightest reaction. Jiao Xiu believed himself to be extremely shrewd, and he had thought of all sorts of plans while coming to the Colosseum. Since Chen Qiu had sealed the cultivations of the 3 young masters and 4 great elders without the slightest scruple, Godfather had to be supporting him from behind and using him to obtain leverage over the others. It was quite likely that the 3 young masters and 4 great elders would have only spoken rudely and would receive a little bit of punishment. In that case, if Chen Qiu continued to pester them, Xiao would use his ability to make him eat grievances. What he hadn't considered though was that the 3 young masters and 4 great elders might have attacked Chen Qiu. In the past, none of the ancestors had ever been attacked by someone in Asura city. In Xiaoxiu's mind, a long-forgotten rule appeared. Disrespecting an ancestor and attacking them were 2 completely different concepts, and the punishment was completely different as well. Disrespecting only represented speaking or acting rudely to an ancestor and thus apart from the citizens and branch family descendants who received death penalty. Direct descendants and elders would at most receive 100 lashes. As for attacking, regardless of the status of the person, as long as their position did not surpass that of an ancestor, they would receive death penalty. It was a rule laid down by ancestors themselves, so no one would break it unless it was forgotten. Why aren't you speaking? If you won't speak, then I will speak in your place. Regardless of whether it is an ordinary citizen of Asura city or a direct descendant, whoever attacks an ancestor will only have one fate awaiting them: the destruction of their body and soul. Among the 3 young masters and 4 great elders, there are some who have raised their hand against me. Thus, my punishment is only beginning and has yet to conclude. You 4 need to withdraw to the side and retrieve your divine presence. Don't alarm the beasts. Li Yunmiu casually waved his hand while speaking with a hint of impatience on his face. When the 3 young masters and the 4 elders in the Colosseum heard his words, their faces immediately paled. By then, they had already believed that they had escaped alive, but it showed up that they were still going to die. Everyone's complexion turned ash-white, and they nervously looked at the clan patriarchs in the sky. Xiaoxiu did not reply, but he did not leave the sky either. If he left, it would mean truly bowing before Chen Qiu. Yet if he did not leave, he would have to face the repercussions of disrespecting an ancestor about which they had talked previously. Whichever path he chose, he would have to eat a loss. Xiaoxiu looked at the carefree Chen Qiu, squarely facing up to his former patriarch. Someone who had obtained the recognition of Godfather and was being used a chess piece by him was really not simple. Lord Ashton, this means that the 3 young masters and the 4 great elders must die, right? Xiaoxiu calmly said, with the clothes on his body fluttering without any wind and a powerful presence erupting from him like a volcano. Li Yunmiu slightly shook his head while looking at the 4 people in the sky. Naturally no, he said indifferently. Is it possible that you think that I am bent on killing the innocent? As long as those 2 who attacked me remain behind, others can go. Right, leave the 2 from Rahu clan. What was the difference between leaving 2 behind and leaving all behind? Xiaoxiu looked at Chen Qiu with endless resentment in his heart. Chen Qiu's way of doing things was straightforward and without the slightest flaw. If the others agreed to leave behind the 2 people from Rahu clan like he asked, the patriarch of Rahu clan would naturally not agree. If the other 3 patriarchs still left, the alliance between the 4 great clans would rupture. But if they did not agree, then the 3 young masters and 4 great elders would die. The patriarchs of the 4 clans were naturally not willing to let that happen, however, so they could only forcefully rescue them. If the 4 of them attacked, Chen Qiu, who had recently become a god, would naturally not be their opponent. In the worst-case scenario though, Godfather residing in the city lord's mansion might make his move. No need to continue talking nonsense with him. A bastard like him dares to be so arrogant after obtaining the attention of Godfather? He is too wanton. We 4 should directly attack and capture him. The patriarch of the Rahu clan had a fiery temper, and so he howled loudly. A golden light blossomed around his hands, and his figure immediately turned into a blur that rushed toward Li Yunmiu. When the other 3 clan patriarchs saw that, they sighed slightly and attacked without the slightest hesitation.